you're very you're a master of manipulating form, and I really love that idea of the two sets of 28 and the line in between. That was so interesting. Thank you. And such a live collaboration, you know, a real thematic inspiration, influence, exchange going on. It felt as if it was happening before our eyes. That's fantastic. Okay, so next is the double act, myself and Adnan. And I'll just give a little introduction to Adnan, who I met many years ago at the King's Lynn Poetry Festival. Adnan Al-Sayegh was born in Iraq. He currently lives in London. He's previously lived in Amman, Beirut, and Sweden. He's widely published, generally writes in Arabic, so he's going to read his two poems in Arabic. The first poem that we're going to look at is by Jenny Lewis, and Adnan's translated it into Arabic. And his own poem is in response to Jenny's poem. And the link between the two poems is Inanna, who is the Sumerian goddess of love, who was called Ishtar to the Babylonians thousands of years ago in Adnan's home country of Iraq, Mesopotamia. Poets, artists, and others from all over the world have been inspired by Ishtar, Inanna. For example, I hope I don't massacre this name, Enheduanna in 2300 BC was one of the earliest known poets in world history, and she was motivated by the idea of Inanna, Ishtar, the goddess of love, and she addressed her in her famous hymn to Inanna. And Adnan was telling me that goddesses and women were very important in Sumerian society. So Adnan has chosen Jenny Lewis's poem, Song for Inanna Ishtar. The poem was based on the sighting of an ancient Near East figurine of Inanna in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. And Adnan had actually previously seen the figure, this figure of Inanna, in Baghdad. So I'm going to read Jenny's poem in English, and then Adnan's going to read it in Arabic, and I'm going to screen share as well. So, great. So, Song for Inanna Ishtar by Jenny Lewis. Your eyes, the twin rivers, Tigris and Euphrates, two great flocks winding through the night, mirrored by star fields. Capriciously you dispose of your lovers, the gardener, the water carrier, the leopard-headed king. You indulged him a full year until he was led uncomplaining to the edge of the furrow. Your breath smells of hooves and spit. Your body emits the shimmer of bulls. The grain of your groin is horned and cloven. When you open up your legs, your vastness swallows us whole. So I'm going to ask Adnan to unmute and to give us this amazing experience of hearing Jenny's poem in Arabic.
شكرا سو. قصيدة أغنية إلى إنانا إشتار للشاعرة جيني لويس. Singing for Inanna Ishtar by Jenny Lewis. عيناك النهران التوأم دجلة والفرات هما سربان عظيمان يلتفان خلال الليل يعكسهما حقل من نجوم بنزوة تركلين عشاقك البستانية والسقاء والملك الذي له رأس في فهد رمسته بالملذات لعام كامل حتى تم اقتياده إلى حافة الأخدود دون أن يشكو بأنفاسك رائحة حوافر وبصاق جسدك ينفذ وميض ثيران وملتقى فخذيك مصدر للطاقة والإغواء وعندما تفتحين ساقيك فإن اتساعك يزدردنا جميعا. Thanks.
Thank you. That was so beautiful. I'm sure Jenny was completely delighted with that translation. It just sounds wonderful. Such a treat to hear the translation. Adnan's going to read his own poem in response to Jenny's in Arabic, and then I'll read it in English. Adnan's poem is called Second Song to Inanna Ishtar, and it was written not only in response to Jenny's poem, but also in response to the same artifact that was in the Ashmolean, formerly in Baghdad. There are just a few notes on names in the poem, and that helps me to kind of scroll correctly as well. Obviously, I can't read Arabic, so I'm relying on seeing these names. Adnan mentions Al-Sayegh, who was a very famous Iraqi poet who died in 1964 and was influenced by T.S. Eliot and Edith Sitwell, and they're both mentioned in Adnan's poem. So there are some wonderful threads running through it, and let's enjoy Adnan's reading of it.
Thanks. أغنية ثانية إلى إنانا عشتار. Second song to إنانا عشتار by Adnan. كيف طلعت من لوح المسمارين في حائط المتحف، التفت بذعر وحيرة إلى وجوه السياح والطلاب مجدودة إليك، كانوا وأنت ترتلين مزامير الحب بخفض وموسيقى لا يليقان إلا بك، يتلمسون بحذر خشية عيون الكاميرات والحارس نهدك النافرة. كيف قد طلع اللازورد من الحجر الصلد، يا إينانا يا عشتار يا أفروديت يا فينوس يا جنية القصيدة، من أتى بك إلى هنا أيتها الغريبة مثلي، من أتى بك أيها هذا الغريب. مرت القطارات والتواريخ والعساكر والقبل، مرت الحروب والأشجار والمنافي، مر السياب وأديت ستويل، ونحن على جسر إمباكمنت نتأمل خرير دجلة والتايمز، كأنهما مسار تاريخين لا يلتقيان ولا يفترقان، ونتحسر على كل ما ابتلع الغياب منا. يا جسد الخير يا أيها التايمز العذب تسلسل بهدوء ريثما أكمل أغنيتي. يصعد جاز من عازفة متسولة في نفق الجسر، فنرقص الليل على موسيقاها حتى يورق بين أصابعنا القداح، وتعشب أعمدة الجسر الطرقات الحانات الصفحات وصولا حتى والت وايت. قفونا لا الدفة تدري عينا ولا أوتونا بيشتم والمركب سكران. يا إينانا كيف نعود لأوروك وقد دمرها الطوفان، تتهادى فينا اللجة تلو اللجة، شطآن تطوي شطآن، ما كنا نحسب أن المنفى سيطول، رحلتنا لم تجني غير الخسران، فتعالي يكن الشعر لنا وطنا والحب الناي الكأس، وما أجملها من أوطان، بل ما أبدعها ما أوسعها من أوطان. آخرة الليل تعودين إلى لوحك في المتحف، وأعود إلى أوراقي أعزف أنزف وبيننا القصيدة. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adnan. That was beautiful. Those wonderful long notes. It sounds so wonderful. So I'll read the English version. Second Song to Inanna Ishtar by Adnan Al-Sayegh. translations by Jenny Lewis and Ruba Abu Qaida. How did you materialize from the cuneiform board fixed to the wall in the museum? You looked in terror and confusion at the faces of the tourists and students surrounding you, while you were chanting psalms of love with modesty and music that are yours alone. They were cautiously touching, aware of the cameras and the eyes of the gods, your firm breasts. How has lapis lazuli come out of hard stone, O Inanna, O Ishtar, O Aphrodite, O Venus, O genie of my poem? Who brought you here, O stranger like me? Who brought you here, O stranger? Trains, histories, armies and kisses have marched by. Trees, wars and exiles have marched by. As Sayad and Edith Sitwell have marched by, while we stand on Embankment Bridge, musing about the murmurings of the Tigris and the Thames, two parallel histories that can neither meet nor part, and so leave us regretting what each has lost by the other's absence. O generous Tigris, sweet Thames, run softly till I end my song. The sound of jazz from a homeless girl rises from under the bridge, and we dance along the night to her music until orange blossom flowers between our fingers, and the columns of the bridge, the roads, the shops, the pages go green as far as Walt Whitman. When we surface, we find our boat is rudderless. Not even Uta Napishtin can steer a drunken boat. O Inanna, how do we get back to Uruk, destroyed by the flood? We are washed from depths to depths, passing riverbank after riverbank. We didn't know that exile would go on so long, but our journey would only bring loss. So come close. Let poetry be our country, love, the flute and wine. How beautiful these countries are, how creative, how expansive. At the end of the night, you go back to your board in the museum, while I go back to my papers, to play, to bleed, and between us is a poem. So many thanks to Adnan for facilitating that kind of double act. It was great fun to rehearse with him and discuss these two poems. And Adnan suggested, there's a few final words. He suggested that Inanna is a poem born from an ancient poem leading to another poem and another poem. And he likens this to the stories of the 1001 Arabian Nights. Every song, every poem, every night reproduces or adds to the infinity of books, of literature, of life. It feels like that's exactly what we're doing here. We're really enriching the experience of poetry, I hope. So, thank you so much, Adnan.
Thank you very much. So, thank you very much.
A pleasure, a pleasure. So we have one poet more to take us up to the break, and that poet is Sarah Doyle. She's